Hi guys, so I am going to be doing a different video today. It's going to be about, if you saw the title, justice for Kristin Smart. I know that a lot of people on YouTube have covered her case, but this is one of those situations where I don't care who's talked about it because you cannot talk about this case enough. It is almost like a Casey Anthony type situation to me. I feel very passionate about this because nothing bothers me more than when law enforcement screws up so horrifically that a murderer just walking around living an everyday life when they are blatantly guilty. So I'm going to be talking about the Kristin Smart case. I'm going to be giving you all of the reasons why I think a certain person is the murderer. And I will be asking some questions of my own at the end that I haven't seen anybody else really ask. I did a bunch of research on this and I'm going to tell you guys my most accurate information. If there is anything I get wrong, don't be afraid to correct me. I'm not here to spread anything false, but here is the backstory behind this case. So Kristin Smart went to a college in California. It was called California Polytech, I think. She was going to a party and a lot of her friends were busy that weekend, so she ended up kind of going, just hanging out and doing her own thing. She goes to the frat party and around 2:30 in the morning she was found by two other co-eds. One was named Cheryl and the other Tim, and they did find her and they were going to walk her home from the party because she had been drinking. So basically she was just doing what every other college student does and parties, and she went and had a good time. She wasn't a big drinker. She was actually an athlete. She was 6'1", very beautiful, blonde hair, and I don't know if she had too much to drink. She could have been drugged. It's really unknown, but regardless, those two people offered to walk her back to her dorm. So along the way, for some reason, this doesn't really add up to me. I don't know why, especially the girl Cheryl would agree to this, but they run into Paul Flores and he offers to take her back to her dorm. And they agreed to this. Supposedly along the way, which Paul has admitted to, he was holding her waist so that she was walking in a straight line. He also said in his own words that he gave her multiple hugs along the way because she was freezing. According to Paul, he dropped her off in the driveway of her dorm and he went to his dorm, and that was the end of the story. And that was the last person to see Kristin Smart that night. So Kristin's family reported her missing, and honestly, the campus police and the regular police department did not do a good job at handling this. They pretty much refused to put this as a missing persons case for a while. On June 29th, so almost exactly a month later, they brought cadaver dogs to the campus to see if they could find her. And you know what? The cadaver dogs led them to a specific dorm room, and cadaver dogs search specifically for dead bodies, by the way. That's what cadaver means. So they bring the police to Paul Flores' dorm room. Paul had a roommate named Derek. Derek was on the right side of the room, Paul was on the left side of the room. The dogs repeatedly went to the left side of the room and were sniffing towards the bottom of Paul's mattress. They kept repeatedly going in. They brought in different dogs. They kept smelling the dead body in the room in the same exact place. Different animals, different dogs that are trained in this. Literally their one job is to find the scent of a dead body. And that wasn't enough evidence, apparently. They even removed the mattress from the room and they continued to go to the left side of the room. That being said, Derek also admitted later that Paul had actually confessed that he did in fact kill Kristin. Now that, I don't know if that's true, but that was reported. So also, it is to be mentioned that Paul had a black eye when they started to interrogate him. When they asked him what it was from, he said that he was playing pickup basketball, got elbowed in the eye, but he also had cuts on his knees. When asked about it to one of his teammates said no, he showed up with that black eye. He actually told me that he didn't know how he got it. So he lied twice about the black eye. And the police confronted him about this, and he said, yes, I did lie. I was just embarrassed because I actually hit my face off of my steering wheel when I was installing my radio. Okay. So that doesn't really make sense to where the scratches on his body came from, but, you know, police didn't really care about that information or the dead body in his room, so we're moving on to the next. He was never charged with her murder, but the Smart family did want to take him to court, so they did for the wrongful death. 27 times during the interrogation, he pled the fifth, even to his age or like names of his relatives. He just kept saying, I don't want to answer that, I'm not going to answer that. And you know, that's ridiculous. I think that's just even more sketchy. I feel like if you didn't do something, you would want to give people all the answers that you could. Clearly, you know, he was trying to hide something. It looks like it was almost earlier that year that he had previously been accused of stalking and possibly trying to break in to another girl's apartment at the school. He was never actually charged with this, but it is good information to have when you're thinking about who's guilty about the case, is that he was accused of stalking another girl earlier in the year. So supposedly Paul Flores took Kristin back to his mother's house, and her name is Susan Flores. So a neighbor of Paul Flores actually saw in the middle of the night some strange activity going on. He saw two figures digging a hole in Paul Flores' mother's backyard, Susan Flores. They were in her backyard digging a hole that was about 4 to 5 feet wide and like 7 to 8 feet long. So it was a pretty big hole. He also saw them pull out a rug that was very heavy and put it into the hole and then cover it with cement and put dirt on top of that. He actually said that he laid carpet for like 15 years and it's not that heavy, so he suspected that there was something very heavy inside of that rug. He didn't know anything about this case because they hadn't released it yet. So a week later, when he saw this on the news and he saw Paul Flores' face, he knew exactly what he had seen and he reported it. Another neighbor had said that there was a lot of construction going on in their yard at that time, that whole week of the murder. So another huge red flag was that Susan Flores had been living in the house during the time of the murder and ended up renting it out to a different family. They were washing their car, they were renting the house, and they were washing their car, and they came across a turquoise earring in the driveway, and it had like speckles of what looked like blood on it. So they turned it into the police department, and Kristin Smart's mother knew exactly the earring that they were talking about, and they actually went to the police station to try to confirm that it was indeed hers, and they had lost it or misplaced it or whatever. They just they lost that main piece of evidence that really could have, you know, really could have just confirmed everything and put Kristin at their residence, but they didn't. They lost it. So it was definitely believed that Kristin is buried in the Flores' backyard to this day. There was actually a cadaver dog named Buster who has found tons and tons of airmen and Marines. He has a long, extensive cadaver dog career, and I'll put an article in the down bar if you want to look at it, but he has a very good resume of being a cadaver dog, I'll just say that. So in 2015, I believe it was, Buster and his owner went there. Buster stopped 4 different times in the backyard at that place where everyone was saying they saw her get buried. And then they had tested the soil because he was in forensics or something, and it did show human decomposition. in the soil. You might be asking, why didn't they dig up the backyard? Because the police went there and they said that there was no reason for them to dig up the yard, and they didn't find anything. And they also said that it would be too expensive to dig up the yard in case they did do it and they didn't find anything. Now, I asked my boyfriend about this. He does digging for plumbing all the time, and I asked him how much it would cost to dig a hole like that, and he said it would be less than $1,000. So I don't really know why that was not worth it to them to do that, honestly. They really could have honestly started a fundraiser for it, a GoFundMe. I'm sure so many people would have participated and easily, paid for that in a matter of a week, maybe less. So I don't really know what their excuse was for not digging up the yard. To this day, the Smart family is still trying to get anybody to dig up the backyard because it is very much believed that she is still there, or her DNA at least is still there. They did find concrete in the backyard, like crumbled up concrete, so it could be that they moved her after there was a lot of speculation about this. But even if they just tested the soil, they wouldn't even have to dig up a lot. One of the forensic scientists was saying they could just drill a hole down to concrete and test the soil there and see if they found human remains or decomposition, and they won't do it. I don't know why. It's mind-blowing to me that they are like this close to finding her body and her remains and putting this whole thing to rest and putting him in jail, and they won't do it over $1,000 or something like that. Like, it's absolutely mind-blowing to me, and like I honestly want to go over there with a fucking shovel and do it myself and prove like that this is bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? It's just absolute bullshit. After that, the sheriff's department just said that the case had run dry, and just to mention, the dig was authorized, it was just never performed. So I don't know why that is. Some people say that the Flores family had ties to the police department, and it seemed like there was a lot of like covering up going on. They did a really shitty job with this case, like unbelievable. I feel so bad for her parents. It's just so unbelievable that people could just treat this as like it's not that serious when it is like the most serious thing. It's disgusting. It really is disgusting. What I think honestly happened was that he went back, he tried to get with her. She might have been more conscious than he thought and tried to fight back, hence the black eye. I think that he might have put her at the foot of his bed until he could figure out what to do with her body. And I think that they rolled her up in a rug and threw her in the backyard. And I think that's where she still is today. And also, I just want to mention that the Flores family tried to sue the Smart family for emotional distress after all of this. I've never heard of a more disgusting family. If they're watching this, I know that you're all living a miserable life because everybody hates you. You're just like Casey Anthony. Everybody knows it was you. You will never live a normal life again because you're cowards and you're disgusting human trash. And I'm sorry that you never came to terms with the fact that you are a murderer and that your parents are just as bad as you. Some questions that I would like to ask is, if the basketball game was a lie, what were the cuts from? Why would multiple cadaver dogs do their job incorrectly? They had multiple cadaver dogs go to the room. Their job is to find dead bodies, and they did lead them to the same exact spot. So they did take a portion of the mattress, and I'm wondering, did they ever test it for her DNA? There was never any information about that, but that would probably show a lot. And the last question I want to just reiterate again is, if the dig was a money situation, why didn't they just do a fundraiser to pay for the cost of the dig? It's just honestly so ridiculous that they wouldn't even consider that as an option, and they just dismissed this even though it was a murder of a young girl. Like, I just can't believe that. It just seems like a very very big cover-up, especially since they lost the earring that was like one of the most key pieces of evidence that they could have found. They owed that to the family to dig up that backyard after losing that evidence. And it just is so disturbing to me that this guy's walking around shopping in Walmart. Is so disturbing. But if it's any consolation to the family, I hope that they know that his family has not found peace. I'm sure that they have to live with their repercussions every single day because everyone knows who he is and nobody is going to let him live this down. Just like Casey Anthony, you know what I mean? It's when you do something like that and the obvious is so clear, they are in their own hell for the rest of their life because they will never be able to live a normal life again. I know it's not really a consolation. He should be in jail and everything like that, but he is not really living, you know, a luxurious life, which makes me and I'm sure many others very happy. But he's obviously a piece of shit, and so is his parents. If there's anything that we can do to help reopen her case, I would love to help with that. But they do have a website, Dig Up the Yard. I think it's Dig Up the Yard. I'll put that in the description box below if you wanted to look more into the case. And yeah, like I said, if there's anything that I can do to spread the word or spread a website or sign a petition or anything like that, I would be more than happy to do that. If you guys have any more cases that you want me to go over, just let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do it. I especially like covering cases that might have a chance to be reopened or are unsolved, and there is a lot of information like this because this is something that I really think if it had another look could be solved. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.